Hey, welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this three-part series, Jeff Ratkovich and I sit down with the industry's best airborne tactical instructors to discuss the importance of training and collaboration in the industry. This series has an all-star lineup, including Jack Schonely, Clay Lacey, and Nick Minx. Jack Schonely spent over 30 years with the Los Angeles Police Department. He's a nationally recognized expert in the area of suspect tactics and perimeter containment, and is a sought-after tactical trainer. As you will quickly learn from his experience, he is uniquely qualified to instruct and write on the topics of perimeter containment, search techniques, tactics used by suspects, use of force, and a variety of other aircrew topics. Jack has participated in over 2,000 perimeter containments during his career and has seen many successes and failures. He has shared his experience with thousands of law enforcement officers across the world instructing on this topic. He is the author of Apprehending Fleeing Suspects, Suspect Tactics, and Perimeter Containment, and has been published in numerous publications relating to this topic. We also get to hear from Lieutenant Clay Lacey, who is currently employed by the Texas Department of Public Safety. In 2000, Lieutenant Lacey was special assigned to the Texas DPS Aviation Operations Division as a task force tactical flight officer, where he worked hundreds of flights and thousands of hours in support of criminal manhunts, surveillance, search and rescue, vehicle pursuits, foot pursuits, and airborne use of force. Lieutenant Lacey developed the Texas DPS TFO training program from the ground up and currently serves as the TFO instructor within the unit. Lieutenant Lacey teaches around the world on behalf of the Airborne Public Safety Association and individual law enforcement units seeking additional specialized instruction. He authors equipment procurement and bid specifications for the Texas DPS and serves as a consultant for companies conducting large-scale emergency management and preparedness planning throughout the U.S. Last but not least is Nick Minx, who's the owner of Tactical Flying. Nick Minx manages day-to-day operations while playing an active role in training and development. A sworn officer for nearly 20 years with the San Diego Police Department, Nick was assigned to SDPD's Air Support Unit as a TFO in 2012. He has since become qualified as a helicopter pilot and has over 3,000 combined hours working both seats in an aircraft and continues to hone his skill as a tactical operator. In particular, Nick has always been fascinated by the study of suspect behavior. Using incident videos and FLIR finds, he compiles data to track patterns of movement in fleeing suspects and applies this information toward the continuous improvement of techniques and training in suspect searches. As part of Tactical Flying, Nick has provided instruction to tactical flight operators in both domestic and international settings, with clients ranging from military and law enforcement officers to federal agencies. I'd like to add these great gentlemen are also co-hosts on the Hangar Z podcast, so look out for episodes where they share their knowledge and passion for the industry. Thank you to our sponsors, Dallas Avionics, Shotover, and Robinson Helicopters. Cheers.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, Jon Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Jack, I'd like to shift gears a little bit to you. I think you've been teaching in this category for probably the longest in this room. So you've seen a lot of this change when it comes to technology and your ability to kind of lean on that to build your course. What's been the most striking part of that to you?
Well, considering that an overhead projector was within my career, that would, some people are going, what did he just say? What is that? I mean, it's been mind-boggling. I mean, how far it's come. And I'm the least technical guy. I do light bulbs. All right. I can't build things. I can't fix things. And when it comes to technology, I depend on others, but I got ideas from other people, that people said, hey, you really ought to try this. Well, I don't know how to do that. Here, I got a buddy that can do that, and try to add that. And I know, for instance, with Kevin Means, I mean, Kevin and I spent a lot of time together over the years watching the software stuff that changed over the years. That was just amazing to me. Where you could see what exactly what he's describing in an animated form. That's really helpful for the student out there that's they want to see the videos. They want to see the animation. They want to see what you're talking about. Some of them are looking at it from the point of view, well, does that really happen? And then you go, well, here you go. By the way, I have 10 more videos exactly like that, but from different agencies. Some people need to see that stuff. And so that's really a big deal. I mean, being able to see that. But I love that Nick ran with the online and the electronic, way of teaching. And kudos. I mean, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. And again, people talk to me about that. And I go, I don't know how to do that. I'm just a dumb cop. But there's other people that know how to do it, and it's good for the customer. And we have a lot of customers, they're around the world, like South Africa, that are asking Nick for it, and begging for it. And it created something different. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Clay, for you, what Jack's describing is exactly what I see in your class, a lot of multimedia. And I know that the development of that is led to, I think, higher engagement rates. And I think of that as a consumer because, I sit in a class. We've all been in that class where the instructor sits in front of you with a PowerPoint and you're dead, bored within the first hour of being in that class. You've done a good job of bringing in, the multimedia aspect to that. You talk about how the technology that is available is kind of lent to that and what you've seen change in the industry as a result.
Yeah. I'll go back to, thank you for the kind words, but I'll go back to something Jack taught me 20 years ago. And it resonated. I wasn't a TFO yet. He said, here's what we're doing. We're providing this tactical insight. What the hell does that mean? We're providing this tactical insight. We're taking this information in with our eyeballs and our ears and screens and all this stuff. We're applying our cop stuff. And we're delivering insight to do two things. One, make sure everybody goes home with all their fingers and toes, and the others catch bad guy. And so what I've seen change, Nick hit on it really well, and his the training that his company provides, I think, is the best out there in terms of understanding angles and aircraft positioning. Well, it's fantastic. There's been a lot of bad guys have gone to jail based on your curriculum. But what's changed for me is, used to, we had to spend a lot of time teaching a TFO what a thermal anomaly was. Back in the day, I started on a FLIR 2000. It never looked like a bad guy. So what has shifted to me with high definition optics is Ray Charles could find a bad guy. Looking at the screen is not the hard part. Now the hard part starts with that movement to contact with our two objectives in mind. Number one, to keep them safe. And so we've had to kind of shift from the figuring out what that is on the screen and now how do we deal with it. And, you look at the case studies that Jack does in his class that are just phenomenal. They pull you in. And my vision for this is, look, we've got metadata on these cameras that know exactly where they're pointed, exactly where the aircraft was when that was struck. We've got high definition video. Why can't we sand table this? Why can't we get 10 guys around a table with VR goggles? And now all of a sudden, this thing that Nick talked about where we were drawing strings to show angles, we can see it. We can see it on a real event. That's my dream for the future of a lot of this training. Now, I'm too stupid to ever figure out how all that would happen. And there may not be much of a niche for it, but I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that advancement of the VR technology and being able to watch Jack's story from 1989 play out live now on VR goggles and get to comment on it and have students involved with it. So, that's the technology side on my end. And then I want to finish by saying, John, you say all these great things about these guys on the show, and you're so kind and humble. Your work and what you're doing right now has revolutionized this industry more than anything that I've seen in my career. And you should be very proud of what you've done in this podcast, this gathering of information, social media. Look how many huge departments have zero Instagram presence. Whether they like it or not, that's the delivery. That is the delivery with the new, younger people. And you're either going to embrace it or you're not. So I think that this podcast and others like it, and then Mike Reno, great guy, picking this up and making it even bigger is going to be one of the biggest steps forward in technology in terms of content delivery and information. So hats off to you, Jeff, Jack. Y'all post quite a bit. This is huge.
I appreciate that, Clay. It means a lot coming from you. I think what we're talking about is very complimentary, right? I'm leaning on you guys and your experience as guests and instructors to make the show what it is. I'm just the dummy that asks the questions, and it's all out of sheer curiosity, because I'm really curious and really intrigued by what you guys do. So I think it's necessary for us to leverage each other's abilities to benefit the overall industry.
Yeah.
So this is kind of the idea coming to full fruition, which is really neat. So again, thank you, Clay, and I appreciate the kind words, and it's been an honor to do this. So
it's true, John. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's very true. You got it. You came up with the idea and you did it, and it's reaching a lot of people. And the proof of that was at HAI. I mean, it was amazing how many people came up and talked about the podcast, and people saying, "Oh my God, I just talked to 5 other people and they all mentioned the podcast." It's getting out there. And are there still people that don't know about it? Sure. But that's changing, and it's changing fast. And that's to the benefit of the listener. We touch on some very important topics, and some of it's entertaining, some of it's very informative, some of it's need to know. I mean, where you need to hear the guests say what they say about whatever the topic is, and learn from it and get better.
Yeah.
We can all get better. And you said you're just sitting there asking the questions. Well, everyone on the screen is doing that regularly now with the podcast, and we're taking people from all walks of aviation, some non-aviators, that are teaching us things.
Yeah.
And when we learn, there's not a single podcast that I've been involved with now where we haven't had a guest on where we get done and it's done recording, and I sit back and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe all the things I learned in the past 2 hours. It's incredible, the things I learned. I didn't know that. I didn't know this." And we all become better for it. So it's the medium is important, but you've done a great job getting it going, and it's taken off, and it'll continue to grow and be beneficial for a lot of law enforcement officers out there. And I'll just end with this. I get this all the time. A lot of people that listen to the Hangar Z podcast about law enforcement aviation are not in law enforcement aviation. They're canine handlers. They're patrol officers. They listen because of what we just talked about. They're learning things, and they don't even have an aircraft over them, but they listen anyway because they know, like Nick said, keep an open mind. They learn things about PTS, about tactics, about communication, about working together as a team. So it's really reaching a broad spectrum of law enforcement, and I'm happy about that. And I know you are too, and everybody that's pictured here is excited about that.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for the kind words, and I have to thank Jeff again. We did this for a while. We were probably paying to do it. In one way or another.
I'm sure you were.
And I was able to drag Jeff along and help build this thing. So a lot of credit to you, Jeff, for doing that.
Yeah. We started out, as a hobby. I mean, it was just fun to, I just love sitting around and being able to talk to guys like you and learn from you guys. And, hearing people's stories is, I think, my favorite part, right? Of how people got into airborne law enforcement or got into their careers, whether it's, military or law enforcement or whatever it is, people's backgrounds and stories, I think, are so important. And I think the podcast does a good job of capturing those stories. And, it's really historical when you think about it, how people got into this. I mean, Jack, you're literally a legend in the airborne law enforcement community because of the books and because of your trainings. And for years and years at LAPD, putting on, the TFO course, and everybody that's attended it, everybody knows who Jack is. And Clay, you're the same, whether you want to admit it or not. And so, but hearing your stories and how you got into your careers, I think inspires people as well. And that's the other part of the podcast that we, really want to do is inspire. So bring good, relevant information to those that are in the community, and then those that are interested in the community, and giving them kind of a roadmap to get where they want to go, whether it's in airborne law enforcement or the military or EMS. It really doesn't matter. But I think hearing those stories is really powerful. And it just tells such a great history of our industry.
Right.
And that's what I really appreciate about it.
I echo all those things. And it's funny. We talk about how quickly these conversations go by. It's 1 hour in and we've answered one question.
Sounds about right.
Managing this interview.
All right, 13 more to go. Let's go, boys.
9 o'clock, right? 2100.
It was daylight behind Clay's back when we started, and now it's the red Z is glowing bright.
But it's interesting. Nick brought it up earlier. It's such good stuff. I wish I'd have known early in my career. I'm a 7 Habits guy. I like that book. I read it often. These final 3 habits of seek first to understand, synergize, and then sharpen the saw, that kind of stuff. I wish I'd have known that when I was young in my career, because where the growth really happens is listening and understanding someone else's position, right? Synergizing with others, and then going out and getting yourself the good training and sharpening the saw, and Nick and I were talking about cold plunges and, mindfulness and all this kind of stuff that we've gotten into later in life. I just wish I'd have had this right here 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you said is one of my favorite quotes. The one that I remember is seek first, understand, then be understood. Yeah. And the perspective that you get as you go through your career only increases with time. So anyhow, the next question kind of piggybacks off of technology in some ways, and it touches on the topic of in-person training. We consider AppsCon, Echo, and HAI, the benefits that come from sitting in a class with like-minded people and all the benefits that come from that. For a lot of people, like we discussed, they can't get there, and it's not because they can't afford to. There was an agency I was just talking to in the Midwest. They have 8 pilot positions budgeted for their police department, but there's 2 pilots currently filling 8 roles, and they're trying to staff as many of those positions as possible throughout the day and the week. So because of that, it's unrealistic to expect that agency to be able to dip out and attend training in person anywhere. So can you talk about, and Clay, we'll start with you on this one, because you just at HI, we're doing in-person training. Can you talk about the importance of in-person training? And then we'll talk about some of the benefits that come from, Nick, what you're doing with some of the remote style learning. But Clay, we'll start with you.
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details.
I think there's no replacement for the synergy that occurs in a classroom with a broad set of students sharing ideas together. And I love to be the facilitator of that, because I tell the story all the time of how I got talked to 25 years ago by pioneers of the industry on the West Coast, and how screwed up we were here in Texas and all that. I really tried to work towards all of us here, Nick, Jack, you guys. Our audience is the 2 volunteer pilot OH-58 sheriff's office in the South, and it's LAPD. And we've got to meet them where they are. And in my opinion, the best way to do that when I start teaching is tell them it's a buffet, take what you like, and then start reading the room. And I think you have to be there to read that room. Something I took from Jack. Jack spends a great deal of time beginning of his class. Who are you? He gets to know who you are. Tell me who you are. Tell me what you're doing. He's doing that, in my opinion, so that he can meet the needs of that person as an individual throughout the training. And Nick, you probably have some more ideas on that. That's one of the limitations of the online delivery. You don't get that feedback.
Correct. No, you hit the nail on the head. The online e-course has its limitations in the collaboration, and I'm a huge proponent of that. One of my favorite events that we did was fairly recently. It was Ryan and I were out at the Palm Springs safety seminar for AppsCon, and we did a roundtable for them. So Ryan and I were talking about it ahead of time. He and I both, that's our preferred method of training, is the in-person stuff. The digital learning is only a gap filler for if you can't get to in-person, but in-person, when done correctly, is the preferred method. It's the best. That's where you're going to get the most takeaway. So we do this online, the roundtable, and I prepared some stuff ahead of time just in case. And we walked into the class and I said, listen, told everybody, here's the deal. this class is going to be what you make of it. I have stuff ready to go in the event that nobody wants to contribute anything, but we're going to make this a round table. What do you guys want to talk about? Anything and everything. And here's why I bring it up. And this is what I'm telling the class. Here's why we're going to bring it up this way. Fortunately for me, I'm grateful for this opportunity with tactical flying to have become that kind of center collection point for information. So the value to you sitting at this round table right now is that you get to ask me questions about anything that bothers you or anything that's on your mind. And I get to take all this information that I've learned from all these other people and carrier pigeon it back to you and spit it out. It's not my idea. It's somebody's going to ask me something about training and retention. And I'm going to say, there's this really cool agency in the Pacific Northwest and they're doing blank. And this is why they say it works. And so the in-person side of that, when done correctly, and that's why I say, like, that's the key with it. In-person can't just be PowerPoint in front of a classroom. It has to be the interaction. It has to be, let me get to know you. And so that class, I had no outline of where it went, and where it went was not at all where I expected it to go. And it just started with like, all right, tell me about it, you guys. Where do you guys work? We did a who you know, and we talked about budgeting and retention and recruitment, and then we talked about staffing issues, and then very little of it was tactics based. Well, it's because at that point in time, that class and that makeup of that class, organically, that was what was most important to them. So instead of us going, we're going to force feed you tactics, NVG, tactics for off airport operator, whatever it is, that wasn't what was most important to them. What ended up being most important to them was how to handle staffing issues. And that was probably what 90% of the class was. There was no way for us to know that ahead of time. And that can't be done through an e-learning, obviously. Difficult to do through a remote. But once you get cops talking, and that was the key.
Yeah.
That was in my mind as I was driving out there to it. I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I got to get these guys talking. So I brought like a box of gifts. And I like candy. I had some challenge coins. I got the like vest strobe beacons that I actually had those left over when we did the 12 Days of Christmas giveaway. And I started like giving out gifts. Like anybody answers anything. Hey, here's something for you. And then I found a abbreviated U.S. Constitution. Okay, this is really good. We all need this right now. And I gave that out. And so everybody starts talking. And then it was, now I'm like stepping back and the class is like, the momentum is just rolling. And so that to have, going back to the question, the in-person training of the standard format, hey, I'm going to teach you some standardized curriculum, definitely a place for that, but we need to understand the limitations for it. I can only talk to mainly cops, but the reality is all of us are good for about 5.5 hours worth of training in a day between breaks. We start the class at 9. By like 9:40, what's everybody thinking about? I need coffee and I need to go hit the head. And then we come back, and by like 11:15, what's next? When's lunch? Got to do 90 minutes. We can't do 1 hour lunches. And then we come back from lunch, everybody's carved out, falling asleep. And you got them for like 2 more hours. Okay, so fit your curriculum into 5 hours. I'm going to give you 5 really good hours. I'm not going to give you 8 and have 3 of it just be like a waste. But if you have that opportunity for the collaboration, which you can often do with pairing that with a standardized curriculum, to me, that's the best module or the best formula for maximum takeaway. And, the guys were jazzed up when we left there. I mean, people were coming up to us afterwards. I got approached by a guy that had an awesome idea. Like, I feel like so often I'm just Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars. Like, they'll come up like, hey, I got this 16th century violin. How much is it worth? I have no idea. But I know a guy, and I like, let me connect you. And then, we'll come up with something, and he comes up with this great idea, and we're like, wow, this is worth doing. This isn't something that's been thought about, and we should do that. That wouldn't happen in a remote environment or specifically a standardized curriculum course. There's a place for all 3. They have to be used appropriately.
Yeah, that's so true. And one of the things that I'll bring into that, whether it's you're sitting in Clay's class or you're roundtable in Nick's class, is every time I've been to a class, you get to know the folks around you. Yeah. And the folks around you aren't from your agency. and they have a whole different set of problems that you've probably never experienced. So at the end of the class, you all go your different directions, and you're like, I hung out with Clay at the bar. I remember him talking about this thing. I call Clay, and he's got an answer for the question I've got. So the networking that comes and the learning that comes as a result of the class that you were attending that week before, you've now are getting answers for things that were completely unrelated to class. So it kind of, speaks to both what you're saying.
Dude, we're all Rick Harrison.
Yeah.
We all know a guy.
Yeah.
I swear to you, like we all just know a guy, and I get calls all the time. Hey, do you have blank? Nope, but I know somebody. Let me connect you. And I'm just connecting people. I just connected a guy on the East Coast with an agency out here that was looking at trying to pick up some people and whatnot. But, to be able to make that connection through a series of connections only because of the podcast, only because of going to the AppsCon. I mean, like, I consider all of you friends. I would not have met you if it wasn't for going to an AppsCon or just knowing about you guys in the industry. And some of my best friends that I've found in this industry, like I've hung out with once in person, but I've talked to on the phone 500 times.
Right.
And that's the benefit of the in-person stuff.
Yeah. Well, Jack, for you, you've done almost all of your training, with the exception of your book, in person. Can you talk to that point?
Well, I can tell you that I have tried so hard to evolve over the years with the class. I really have, and it's difficult. And it's difficult for a couple reasons. Well, number one, let me start by saying I've gone through classes at the Academy here in Oregon twice now, where it's like instructor development courses. The last one was only a few months ago. It was 5 days. I learned so much. And then I thought, how can I apply this to my class? And you know what? A lot of it I can't, even though I want to. Unless the size of the class is appropriate. I've taught classes with 6 people. I've taught classes with 700 people. You can't do it with 700. You can't break into groups. You can't do the interaction as much. It's impossible. Whereas with 6 people, it's like, yes, now I can try some of this stuff. And I know it works. So I try and change little things. Here's one of the things that I've changed in the past 6 months. It used to be that I would ask a question and I would answer it.
Yeah.
I did it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that as much. Yeah. I asked a question and I stand there in silence now. And I stand there. And guess what? Eventually somebody's going to say something. And it creates this conversation. And it's so cool. And I knew that worked, but I wasn't being stubborn, I don't think. I was kind of scared to try it. I'll admit it. I mean, I was kind of scared because I knew I had a good thing. I also knew that it could be better. And I've always known that. And so I'm changing things too, to try and adjust, but it depends on the class size. I love the roundtable idea that Nick did. I mean, I would love to do that.
It was
and I've done it a couple times at safety seminars, actually, with certain topics. It is fun because you really do. If they get going, and Nick was very smart how he did that. It was very sneaky. I love it. But if
we're
they
a sucker
get going,
for anything free.
Man, heck yeah. If they get going, you're going to have the best class ever because you're going to be telling them about things that they want to know. You're going to learn things. I mean, I learn things at every single class I've ever taught. And 99% of the time, it's during the break. Yeah. Where people come up during the break because it's cops and they don't raise their hand during the class, but they come up at the break and say, "Hey, Jack, I just had a caper about 2 weeks ago. Where do you hear this?" And they tell me, I go, "Oh,
why don't you bring this up?
I've never heard of that before." And then what do? We come back from the break and I go, "Hey, Clay just came up to me at the break." I lay him out. Yeah. I lay him out every time. Clay just came up to me at the break. He found a guy 2 weeks ago hiding inside of a wall, and I go through it. And, but if you had a smaller class and you did it with different techniques, like Nick was talking about, you'd get that sort of stuff constantly.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's just difficult at times, but you do what you can. And I really, truly believe it has to do with the size of the class. I mean, my magic number, I think, is like 40. If it's under 40, man, I like that a lot because you will get more interaction and get the information that they want to hear about. If it gets over 40, cops, will never raise their hand.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, you end up learning at the break and bringing it up after the break.
Culturally, I feel like law enforcement, whether it's briefing or roll call, whatever you want to call it, or training, where it's ingrained in us, do not raise your hand. If you do, you will be beat later. So that's
so wrong, because
come on, there are a few guys that you have to lay
beat
that
later.
ground rule out. Yeah, right. Yeah. They do need to be beat, but yeah.
So,
It's always right before lunch. I have a question.
Yes.
Where were you an hour
End of
ago?
the day. Yeah.
it lends into some of what we take away from these classes, because you all teach the greatest classes. But Jack, if you have a student in your course that's engaging with you and describing what you just said, a scenario that reinforces the point you're trying to make, man, it livens the class. It changes the dynamics of it, right?
It changes everything. It changes everything. You come back and then suddenly somebody else raises their hand and goes, "Hey, by the way, yeah, we had that too, but it was a little different." And then they describe it. Next thing you know, you're in this 20-minute conversation that would not have happened.
Yeah.
I would have just been hitting the clicker and turning the next video on. But we had this 20-minute conversation about something real, something that just happened in the past, couple weeks or months. And it ends up being this really, really good thing. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, and I think, it's not like, in the police academy where the audience doesn't know what they don't know. You're talking to seasoned law enforcement officers, a lot of guys that have been doing this job for a long time. They're just on the receiving end of, they're sitting in the audience. And I think engaging with them and bringing those stories out just is, it's now not the, Jack Schonely show. It's the, like Clay said, he's facilitating the training, but a lot of it is drawing it out of the class so that everybody's learning from it. And I think that's, a really cool thing. And I think it's we should be tapping into that, these stories and these incidents that, so that everybody can share that information and learn from it. I think it's important.
I should say to tag on to what you just said, Jeff, is that even though it's called instructor development class, the word facilitator is used constantly in those classes. They don't say instructor anymore. It's facilitator. And at first I thought, what's that all about? And then by the end of the class, you go, yeah, we really are facilitators. We're just aiming the boat in the right direction and hoping that, things start rolling. And if you do it right, it turns out really good. And they receive the information in a way that's different than before.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also, we're in a unique position to deliver content that's fun. Think about your required law enforcement training. Wah, wah, wah. You're going to get your whatever your hours are.
Easy back to us.
We've got a whole culture of officers that they get just beat down in training. So we get to come in and deliver some stuff. And if the student believes you really have their best interests in mind, I think it's a lot more exciting to teach. I've had people say, "Hey, can you teach our normal 30-hour block?" No, I'm not doing that. Now, I would love to learn felony stops and building searches from Jack Schonely. I would go do that right now in Oregon. But I'm passionate about this, and I think the men that are on this screen right now are also that, and that helps out quite a bit.
Clay, any insight from you as to kind of how to balance that out, again, for the agencies that can't, for whatever the reason is, attend in-person training? What's your recommendations?
Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking.
I think what Nick said is really good. Be open-minded. Like, we can do things in blocks. You don't have to have 3 days. You don't have to have 5 days. We can come multiple times. We can do the same class, shortened 3 times a day. There's things that you can do you don't have to have a facility. We can teach in a hangar with a projector. We don't have to make it a federal event to get training done. But what it boils down to is it's difficult. Like Nick said, operations, everybody staying up and running, cost associated with it. And then again, what do some agencies say? I can't remember what California is. In Texas, it's TCOL. Are you going to get TCOL credit for this course? In law enforcement command staff, if it's not this state certified training, they don't give it to you. And look at all the low probability, high consequence events that we deal with in our career that we just don't train on. The new chase policies where we don't chase anybody, right? But we're going to ask this 4-year officer who's never been in a car chase to go chase the guy that just downed a blue suit. It's a disservice to them. And it goes on a lot in our industry. And I think these men here were able to deliver something that I think from the patrol officer up through an aircrew member is engaging, and it may keep them alive, and it may catch some bad guys.
Yeah, 100%. Jeff, any feedback on that?
I think that one of the I don't know if I'm going to answer the question or not, but I think one of the challenges that I've seen coming from a municipal law enforcement agency to a now statewide agency, and one of the I guess challenges that I have right now is, we work with pretty much every agency in the state, and seeing the varying levels of employment of the aircraft or knowledge is, coming from a city department where I was able to, go to a roll call training and provide, hey, this is, or even a debriefing of an incident and saying, hey, this went well. This is what we could have done this better. And, this would have helped if we had this information. I think going, and Clay can probably speak on it too, is working with all these different agencies and varied tactics and varied, I guess, experience levels has been really eye-opening for me, and a challenge that, I'm seeing. And then also on a training side of it for our TFOs is, the Tennessee Highway Patrol has never had full-time tactical flight officers. So that's kind of the challenge that we're in right now is training training troopers to be tactical flight officers, and, being a municipal, law enforcement, having a lot of experience in municipal law enforcement, and trying to train a trooper to then, do this TFO role. And then again, I'm seeing things that I've never seen before because I'm working with agencies that I've never worked with before, from the air. So those are some of those challenges that I'm seeing right now. And I don't know that I answered your question, but it was right at the top of my mind when you asked. And maybe Clay can speak on that as far as how you do that for, a state like Texas, where I'm sure you guys have some of the same challenges working with all these different agencies, and how you guys maybe can, or I guess some tips and tricks on how to, I guess, rein that in.
Well, you bring up a good point. I was asked, I taught a week-long course to the Botswanian South African Air Unit, Federal Police there. And I'm like, what are they going to want to hear out of this? Well, it was a great course. It went well, but I was open. I was listening to what they're doing. They're doing, a helicopter with a pilot in the front right, a TFO in the back. They're going out and looking for people killing elephants, right? They go get guns from the police station, put them in the helicopter, go do it. But at the end of the day, to your point, understanding your audience and who the customer is makes a huge difference. With regard to supporting multiple agencies, 97% of the flights we make here are not for Texas DPS. They're for all these other agencies. And my quick answer to that is tons of humility, hat in hand every time, and then making that young man or that young woman on the other end of that radio 100% believe that you are invested in them, with the two things we talked about earlier in mind, that you're wanting to keep them safe and you're wanting to help them catch this bad guy. I've never had that let me down. Where I have failed in the past is when I became arrogant, when I got frustrated and sharp on the radio, said things I shouldn't have said. The delivery was terrible, acted like their deal wasn't a big deal. It wasn't important. Those are the young mistakes of young aircrew members. And if folks can avoid that, it goes a long way towards working with any agency. I think I could go get into a helicopter at San Diego or LA, and I may not know where I'm going, but I think the boys and girls on the ground would believe that I care about them and that we're going to try to do this safely, whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Yep. Something that I think kind of suits this conversation well is the topic of regional fly-in training. Both Jack and Clay, you guys have been to regional trainings that I've helped coordinate, and you see the agencies come together who otherwise may never see each other outside of these regional trainings. So I think for the folks that don't have those, it's really important to consider doing that, because again, you don't see these folks, you don't really get a chance to talk to them or understand their operations as much as you do when you go to these things and sit by them and kind of mutually digest what Jack or Clay is talking about in front of this group. And then you start exchanging information and how you do the thing. And it goes back to what you're saying, Jeff, like, regionally, everything's different. How we do things in Southern California is different from how you do it in Texas or anywhere else. So to kind of take that information and digest it in a way that's applicable to that specific area, I think is really cool. So, I highly recommend agencies, step up, whether it's to APSA or, reach out to us, and we'll figure out a way to get some regional flying training for you guys. I think it's just really important. So I don't know if Clay or Jack, you guys haven't taught at those recently, have any perspective on some of the benefits you saw as a teacher, and then also as a kind of a bystander watching the interaction of the folks at those trainings.
I love the regional trainings, especially the fly-ins, because for multiple reasons. There is a wide variety of people there and airframes, and that. So now you have to change a little bit in how you approach certain topics. But I also love watching, at the breaks and at the lunch and seeing the networking, because you cannot talk about how important networking is. You can't talk about that enough. It's just so vital. We've always said that like at the LAPD aircrew course, it is, I believe it's still said every year on day one, that you will learn more this week from the people that you're sitting next to than you will from all the instructors that are going to be in front of you for the next 5 days. And that is a fact. That's not just, talk. That's a fact. The networking, we end up bringing up the topics maybe, but then they end up talking about it. What equipment do you use? How do you use that? We just got that. Yep. And what does this do? And next thing you know, they're learning stuff while they're sitting there with someone they just met in the last hour from another part of the state or part of the world. And so that's why the fly-ins are so valuable. The networking part is just as important, if not more important, than somebody standing up there talking about a topic. That may have been the thing that brought them there. Maybe they take some good stuff away from that. But the fact that they're sitting there together and talking and chatting and networking, that we know, because we've all been there, that you end up learning lots of other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of one of these things, you just got to put one foot in front of the other and just start, reach out, contact somebody and how do I do this? And we'll help.
I can honestly say every single time I'm contacted, particularly by a department, and they say, hey, can you come do this? Yes, I can. And they say, well, when can you come and how much and all the logistics? And then I always tell them, you need to fill the room. Invite everyone. Don't just invite your canine handlers. Don't invite your patrol. And don't just invite the people from your department. And I think about 80% of the departments say, okay, yeah. And then you get there and sure enough, there's people from other departments there. There's a few that hold out and say, well, we're paying for it. We're not going to invite anybody. I don't like that, because when the big one hits, guess who's going to be standing next to you on that perimeter? Yeah. Somebody with a different uniform and a different badge, and they're going to be there helping you. And so, it ends up being a regional training. If I have anything to say about it, it always ends up being a regional training, because of we're all in it together. And when the big events hit, and it doesn't have to be a perimeter, it could be a natural disaster. You're going to be working with these people from these other agencies. Why not be at a training with them and network and get to know them and go, you're Jon Gray. I've heard about you, or I know you, and that sort of thing happens. And next thing you know, things are happening better at these events when they do come up.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want to back both Jack and Clay on this, because I think both of you guys have addressed your original question was like, well, how do we do this? How do we make the in-person stuff happen? And Clay gave out the answer how to train. Like, okay, there's a ton of resources. Everybody here All you have to do is make a phone call and we will make it happen for you. I mean, we truly all care about the training. We're doing this for the right reasons. It's not to go out and get, because we're buddies with somebody at the academy and they're going to hook us up with some overtime. We're doing it like truly because it's out of the goodness of our heart. We believe in the mission. And then Jack's talking about the want to train. And I think that's an important second component to that, is that not only how do you do it, but you have to want to do it. And I think about the energy that I see at like the Heli Expo and the con, and I think like, where's your guys' energy the other 364 days? It has to be year round. This can't be just simply a check the box. And so, maybe there's a certain percentage that are there for the government vacation, and there's a certain percentage of your high motivators that are there because they want the training. But then that subcomponent of both of those is to understand why it's important. And so what I always think about is similar to like the accident chain. There's an aircraft accident, right? And the FAA starts going back and they see the accident chain, and you go to the airliner that drove itself into the Everglades because the cops or the pilots were fixated on the malfunction light on the landing gear, I think it was. And so is that a fixation. But so you start with the chain of, did any of you guys watch the Blanco Lirio guy on YouTube? Did you see
Yes.
Did you see the one about the Pakistan Airlines 737 that they buried in a neighborhood? They landed it gear up, scraped off the bottom of the engines, aborted the takeoff, tried to climb out. It's one of his recent ones, but he talks about the accident chain way up at 10,000 feet. They were having a conversation. They didn't observe the Airbus golden rules, the sterile cockpit. And so you see this chain starting. Okay, so take that chain and apply it to the two questions that you asked, how to train and want to train, but then to understand why it's important. And so what I think about is that chain, go all the way to the end. Why do we do this mission? If we truly believe in it, it's because we believe in the freedom of the United States and keeping people safe on the ground. You should have the freedom as a citizen here to be able to walk around without being fear victimized. Well, how do we do that?
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
By being practed and kept safe by the cops and this and that. So then now we've started with that.
I was going to say move out of California, but
but the weather's great. So then just below that is we want to keep the cops safe, right? Okay. And then below that is we want to keep the air unit. We know the value of the aviation unit. Well, how do we demonstrate the value of it? It's through effectiveness. Effectiveness comes from the training. And so we can't, John and I have joked about this so many times, we cannot be a pigeon in the flying club. Yeah. We have to go out and be good at this because we have to keep the citizens safe, to keep the cops safe, or to keep the cops safe, to keep the citizens safe in that order. But then also too, from a selfish standpoint, we want this job to stick around, right? Like we want to, we whether we're in the air or we're on the ground, we know the value of it. If we're in the air, we know the fun of it. We don't want it to go away. But if you look at the accident chain and we add up enough little failures of effectiveness, eventually this job goes away and all of that suffers. And then you have the end result of the chain, the anarchy, right? Like I know that's the extreme example, but the reality is we add up enough of those and what's going to happen? Eventually these air units are going to go away. And so the energy that we show at a Heli Expo or an AppsCon where everybody shows up for training, or the TFO course, like, I'm all into training. That has to be year round. And there are plenty of guys that are like that. But then there's a commander or a sergeant or a supervisor or a chief TFO or somebody who says, I'm just not seeing it. And it's because it's easy to not train. The hard thing to do is train. And so what I want to encourage everybody out there is to the other 364 days of the year, you have 5 people here on this podcast that are like, dude, we will do anything. You say no idea is off the table. I tell people all the time, if you want to train on the moon, tell me. And I'll go, wow, I never thought about that before. Let me see if we can make it happen. And I'm not a no guy.
I have modified our course and done so many things and gotten people here, moved stuff around to make the training happen. That is truly what I'm passionate about. Is I want the training to be able to get into the operator's hands, that they don't miss out on it because simply there's a budget clerk that shuts it down, or for one reason or another, somebody doesn't want to write the memo, because then that starts that chain. And if we let that chain progress far enough, the cops on the ground suffer. We know the value of aviation in law enforcement. And then who suffers? The citizens. And I truly, even after 20 years, and I know all you guys too, I believe in that. Yep. One of our greatest freedoms in the United States is our ability to walk around without being fear of victimized. Every parent wants the same thing as a parent in Baghdad or a war-torn country, for their kids to be able to walk down the street without becoming the victim of a crime. And we want that same thing. Aviation is a huge value for that. And so it's the understanding of why the training is important also. By showing the effectiveness, you're going out, making your unit look good, you're producing the numbers. And so now that all ends to one last question, which is it worth it? And so in these hard budget times, you don't want somebody sitting upstairs in their budget office going, like, what's the most expensive thing in a city? First, it's personnel. And then secondly, it's always aviation. They get to aviation, and is that the easy cut? And for them to say, is it worth it? You want that answer to be, oh yeah, these guys, man, pursuits. And, they tracked this one pursuit and we didn't pay out $25 million and they captured 7,000 people last year and all that. And they move on. We want them to move on to the next thing, because we have to keep the aviation around. I apologize for soapboxing, but it's the understanding of all the way through it and the why. I want to see that same energy at a heli expo year round. I want people calling me up hungry for it, and I will bend over backwards to make it happen for your unit in one way or another. That's why we have multiple instructors. We will come to you. We'll do a regional event and have everybody, all your neighbors come, like, you name it, come up with the idea. We'll make it happen to the best of our ability. Do the training.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Nick.
Yeah. Well said. I feel like the two things you touched on were effectiveness and efficiency. And those are the things we're trying to improve through training and even through networking, right? To some extent. So it all comes down to that, the ability to do the job better. That's what we're looking for, and that's what we're encouraging. One of the things you brought up that I'd like to suggest, and I'll suggest that for myself, but I'm sure you all will be equally as willing to participate. For the folks that, they're trying to justify going to an APSCON, going to an HAI, but don't know necessarily how to justify that on paper, their command staff, reach out. We'll give you some suggestions on ways to paraphrase that and to respond to your command staff in a way that we think is effective. So I know that, like Nick said, the decision makers sometimes are the roadblock to training, and that's unfortunate. And reach out, and we'll see what we can do to write in a way that is, effective in communicating the purpose and need for training.
And I have to say, Nick's got a really good package that he'll send you for tactical flying as well, that kind of justifies the cost of, doing the online course. If that's really only you can, every agency's budget is different. And, so yeah, there are some agencies that, get to send their folks out all the time to do these trainings, or at least a couple of people to go out to an in-person event and then bring information back. But then Nick's got, all the justification for, the cost involved in the online training that, can supplement or even replace the in-person training if your budget just can't really get, to get people out, of town and on a government sponsored vacation. So
thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, it's great. And,
some is better than nothing.
Oh, 100%. And, even I do it all the time, and I've got my TFO doing it as well, is, again, talking about technology, YouTube, and all the videos that are out there nowadays of pursuits, especially the ones that have got the audio and sometimes even the ARS overlays and stuff like that. Those are invaluable to learn, just for like a brand new TFO. And what I've been working on with my TFO is listen to this TFO, how he calls this pursuit. Listen to how he describes the scene to, the responding units, because just listen to that, pick up on it. It's kind of like those, they have those trainings for pilots for ATC communications and stuff. And a lot of it is just listen to this and then say it back, say it the way the training video just said it. And we can do the same thing. And, that doesn't cost you anything other than, internet access, right? To get on YouTube and look up these videos. And there's a ton of them out there now. And so I've got, my TFO when we're at the office and not going out flying or whatever, I'm like, hey, get on and look at these videos and watch them. And and that's how I think we all learned. I mean, that's how I know I did. I was just telling the story the other day, Jack going to the LAPD aircrew school and the training portion where they talked about surveillance work. And they showed that video of like the mock surveillance and the TFO calling it and stuff.
Yep.
And then fast forward a year and now I'm full-time in our aviation unit. And day 1 or day 2 of my full-time, assignment to the unit. And I'm out with Dave Mullins and we're doing a surveillance. And I'd never, even as a part-time TFO, like we never went out and did the surveillance stuff. It was always one of the special agents coming out and doing that with Dave. And he threw me in and he was like, all right, we're going to go do this surveillance. I'm like, oh, what are we doing? He was like, oh, we're going to climb up to like 6,000 feet and we're going to pick up. And we were back, this is back with the, Fujinon binos and stuff. But, picking up this car on the 91 going into Orange County and at 6,000 feet. And I'm like, are you friggin' serious? I had no idea how to, and it's different. I mean, it's the same, but it's different, than
it's very different.
A pursuit and the lingo and all I did was like, oh, well, I saw this one video at LAPD aircrew school. I guess I'll just go with that, and I just mimic kind of like how the TFO in that video was talking.
Yep.
And so I think it's very important and it's easy stuff that we can do. So like Nick saying, but you have to be hungry for that. Yes. And if you're hungry for it, the information is out there that you can do. It doesn't have to be a formal, class or school or training event. You can just open up YouTube and debrief a pursuit video. And that's what gets us to where we all want to be and where our customers, the officers on the ground that we're serving, the citizens deserve to have that competent aircrew up above, because otherwise we're wasting money if we're not, putting effective crews out there. You said it, John, effective, efficient, and I say productive. I that's my 3, kind of mantras, I guess, is, if you're going to be up there, be productive, find work, make work for yourself and, help where you can, and then do it efficiently and effectively.
Yeah. That video was made with the exact purpose, for the exact purpose of not being your first surveillance, that your first surveillance shouldn't be a real surveillance. It should be watching that video, watching it and listening to it. Sean Malachi and I put that together. We coordinated that and got Glenn Grossman and Mike Grossman and SIS. And we said, this is what we're going to do. And this is how we're going to film. And then Mike Grossman edited it and it turned out great. And it was and all it did was, it was very simple. It took maybe 2 hours to film that. But the TFOs that viewed it later all said, wow, I'm glad I got to see that before you threw me up there at, 8,000 feet and tell me to follow that car, because the terminology is different. And it isn't the same as a pursuit. And the things that happen are not the same because the guy doesn't know you're watching them. There's all sorts of, unique things. That's why we did that video.
You don't see counter surveillance on a pursuit, guys just trying to, get away. Yep. But, then when you get up there and the first time you see somebody doing counter surveillance and you can recognize that and let the guys on the ground know what you're seeing is huge. And so, we just saw it yesterday. My TFO saw a guy doing counter surveillance, for the first time and didn't, he didn't identify it. I saw it immediately. I'm like, hey, let these guys know he's doing counter, like don't go in this area. And, and we called him off and then, picked him back up when he got back out. But so, it's really important to, again, all this little classes, or the classes are great. And, but like I said, if your budget doesn't allow for any of it, get on YouTube and start pulling videos and just do something. Yeah. Like I think we used to call it hip pocket training in the Army, pull the book out of your hip pocket and, come up with some sort of training to do. And you can do it very easily on a daily basis.
I think in critical incidents, and your definition of a critical incident might be different, right? It could be the new TFO who's now in the position that Jeff talked about. Over surveillance, you're like, holy cow, you're panicking now, trying to figure out how to make this thing work. But you revert back to your lowest level of training most times. So if you haven't had training in whatever said thing is, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So Nick, I know you're short on time, so I want to kind of pass this to you before you have to split, if you have to split.
I'm good.
But
make sure you do the exit.
Yeah. There it is.
Not leaving yet.
That was a good practice, though, Nick. Look
for folks that are limited on either their budget or maybe their ability to even get to training. What do you guys offer that folks could take away and view in a way that provides training for these situations we're talking about? This is the end of part 2 of our conversation with Jack Schonely, Clay Lacey, and Nick Minx. Stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Dallas Avionics, who provides innovative products to law enforcement, the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, military, air medical, search and rescue, and special missions operations. Dallas Avionics distributes OEM equipment, including communications equipment, digital audio systems, PA systems, flight tracking, and other mission-critical devices. Visit DallasAvionics.com for more details. Thank you to our sponsor, Shotover. Shotover Systems is the leading developer and manufacturer of high-performance gyro-stabilized cameras with advanced real-time AR mapping and mission management, all backed by unparalleled custom training and support. Now offering the M2 multi-sensor system, sole 6-axis EO/IR platform with 4K Ultra HD color and infrared technology. Ideal for law enforcement and defense. Offered with real-time AR overlays to quickly identify streets, weather, and traffic. Automated license plate recognition, 24 megapixel digital photographs, and automated steering and tracking. Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Thank you for supporting the sponsors who make these podcasts possible. The Hangar Z podcast is a huge advocate of the industry conferences because of the training, education, and networking that takes place at these events. I wanted to highlight 2 conferences, the first one being PavCon, which will be held in Austria May 27th through May 29th. For more information on that, go to pavconeurope.eu. The second conference we want to plug is the ECHO Public Safety Aviation Conference in Richmond, Virginia. That'll be held September 29th through October 2nd. For more information on that one, go to echoflightcrew.org. Catch you later. Cheers.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.